Mentioned, some of the reasons why the price, especially this year, is going up because of, the issues. Is there anything else that you think is one of the reasons as to why, the gold price is continuing to hit record all highs? I think even this week, I think I got a note that it hit record all highs. Actually, I should say the date, actually, just for people to know. So this is week commencing, what is this? Week commencing 22nd of September. So 22nd, yeah. September.
Yeah, so I mean, so far this year, the gold price is up 34%. So far this year in 2025.
That's insane.
Platinum is up 51%, which is staggering in itself.
Yeah.
And silver is up 42%. And I'm sure we'll obviously talk a bit more about silver.
Yeah.
But that just shows, the movement that we've sort of seen in recent times. There are such significant returns for precious metals historically. I think geopolitics plays a massive part in the price of gold as well. We saw spike as soon as the news, obviously, sadly, kind of came to light that Russia had invaded Ukraine, that we saw a huge push in the gold price then. Obviously, there's remains the tension between China and Taiwan, and we've seen China buying their central bank in China buying huge amounts of gold on a consecutive basis, and some of those eastern countries following suit, as well as they essentially pull away their reliance on the Western world and the US and some of these economies in the West too. So they're buying huge amounts of gold, which is driving the gold price up again. And then, of course, there's still the ongoing tension in the Middle East as well. Yeah. So all of these factors have a big part to play when it comes to the gold price. And typically, it's when these bigger economies announce things like interest rate cuts that people naturally are going to pull their money away from the banking sector and move it into places like gold, where they can see these returns now, and they're really enticing, of course. But fundamentally, it will surprise you sometimes, some of the clients that come forward, certainly for us, that have such a sort of almost apocalyptic view of the way the world is going. So if all financial infrastructure and the monetary system were to break down, there's people out there, very few, I'd have to say, that genuinely believe that if they take some delivery of gold coins, that they will be able to then use them in that post, in that apocalyptic world to buy goods and food or whatever it may be. Okay. And in some cases, you have people burying their gold in the garden, and that's no exaggeration. Wow. In case that is to happen one day, and that's a very extreme view, but that does come up. I'm hearing less of that now.
Okay.
Than maybe when I first sort of started in this world. It's more of a kind of sensible move into gold as an investment option. Yeah. But you'd be surprised what people come out with.
They think we're moving back to the bartering. Move back to the bartering system where actually it's back. Which they might not be wrong, because at the end of the day, like you say, gold holds that value, so it logically it makes sense that it would still hold value in the future, even if in that type of world where you could still utilize that, because people would still like it and flock it in, like you say, is good to see, and it's stood the test of time. So I can definitely understand that. Did you see a large push into gold when the tariffs came out? Because that earlier this year there was obviously that had a bit of a bit of a response to it as well. Yeah,
that caused a bit of a knee-jerk reaction in the precious metals market, and of course, a lot of the gold that the US are reliant on is stored in Switzerland and then shipped across to the US, and then that was essentially heavily tariffed, which came as a huge surprise and sort of shook the precious metals market quite considerably. Something else we haven't necessarily touched on, which is again at play in all of this, is BRICS too. So obviously this group of nations that are moving away from their reliance on the West, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and are implementing things like their own monetary system. These are some of the big economies that are buying huge amounts of gold at the moment, and are utilizing gold as a reserve asset and sort of moving again that reliance away from the dollar, so de-dollarization. And that again is having a big impact on a bigger scale within the gold market. And then on top of that, we're seeing a lot of sort of momentum buying, I think, from investors too. So all these factors are at play.
That's a very intriguing point, actually.
Yeah.
The fact that you said that, because that would make sense as to how that could also drive the price if whole nations are buying gold, right? If you have governments buying gold, or let me not say back, it's almost like backing it, right? Like is if it's the same as if governments were backing Bitcoin and investing whole in Bitcoins. You could definitely see a surge in that too, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, in 2023, BRICS nations were the biggest purchases of gold.
Yeah.
In 2023, I think China bought something like 225 metric tons of gold, which is the single biggest purchase of gold across the course of the year in recorded history, as I understand. So, again, it's that sort of split between the West and the East that is certainly at play at the moment, and the tension that is there, and more countries are joining BRICS as well over the course of time. So it's a really interesting point economically and politically across the world, I think.
Yeah. In that, in these different surges that have happened across like platinum, silver, and gold, is there any surprising new behavior that you've seen amongst like UK investors?
Well, I would say the most surprising thing for me at the moment is you'd anticipate that a lot of customers would be selling given the gold price is so high. The last few days, we've seen, and usually the average is 9 buy transactions to every 1 sell transaction through our website on our trading platform. We've seen 17 buys to every 1 sale. So it just shows that people don't think that the gold price is peaking sort of anytime soon. And then on the, so silver and platinum are an interesting one in the UK, because when you're purchasing both, you have to pay VAT on top. So that 20% often puts investors off. As you can imagine, you've got to make a pretty significant return. Obviously, based on the numbers this year so far, you'd have already made that return and then some. Yeah. But that puts a lot of investors off. But there are ways in doing it without actually having to pay the VAT. So, for example, the Royal Mint, we now give customers the option to buy silver and platinum through something called DigiSilver and DigiPlatinum, which means they can circumnavigate the VAT, but they never take physical ownership of the metal itself. Okay. It's all physically backed and stored in the vault in South Wales, and they can incrementally buy it, but it's a way of doing it without actually having to pay the VAT. So that has then led to a real sort of uptick in sales, certainly from our side of things as well. And I think, once you get into one of these sort of metals, the interest then sort of moves to the other ones as well. And silver and platinum are really interesting because typically there are more industrial uses for both than that of gold.
Which is interesting, right?
Yes.
You think that surely that should have more value. Maybe some people are betting that over time it will have more value because, like you say, it's going to actually have some use to it as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, silver is heavily used in renewable energy, so it's a key component when producing solar panels. Platinum historically has been used as a key component in catalytic converters. So as we move to electric cars, the demand for that has dipped slightly, but because a lot of the platinum in globally is actually mined in South Africa, and there's a lot of infrastructure issues in South Africa, supply is waning slightly. So that means the price has gone up because there isn't so much of it sort of awash in the market. But yeah, just going back to, I guess, to customer sort of trends. I mean, we in the UK, for bullion coins, because of the CGT exemption, we're just seeing consecutive quarters of record sales because people are utilising that as a safe way and a tax efficient way of holding their funds, and they're seeing that return on their investment as well.
Yeah.